Good morning, everyone, and thank you all for being here. I'm State Representative Sharon MacDonell, and I'm here today with three wonderful, impressive people who just happen to be naturalized citizens. Each of them is here to tell their stories and to stand up for their own communities. But before they do that, I want to explain why we're here and why I'm introducing my resolution today. It's clear that the Trump administration is not a fan of immigration or immigrants, whether they're documented or not. From day one, Donald Trump has claimed to believe all immigrants are criminals and apparently wants the public to have the same view. They want to discourage even skilled legal immigration to the United States, betraying the United States' proud identity as a nation of immigrants. And here's how I know this. This summer, the U.S. Department of Justice issued a memo instructing its civil division to prioritize the denaturalization and deportation of naturalized citizens. Historically, the concept of denaturalization has only been used to revoke the citizenship of people who are proven to have either acquired their citizenship through fraud or misrepresentation during the naturalization process, or of those who are threats to national security. This process has been used very sparingly in American history and only following extensive and expensive court proceedings. However, the Trump administration wants to speed up the process and lower the bar. While the administration will insist that they're only going after naturalized citizens who've committed violent crimes, we've heard that before, the memo says that the civil division should pursue any other cases referred to them that the division determines to be sufficiently important to pursue for denaturalization. We all know that Trump promised he would focus his deportation efforts on only the most vicious criminals who are undocumented, but then proceeded to demand that his ICE army mask up, leave their badges at home, and snatch up and deport anyone they please without due process. That has led to innocents and citizens being arrested and deported, and even cases of some being sent to torture chambers abroad. At a time when the administration is ignoring the courts on all issues, any threat to a population, no matter how unconstitutional, must be taken very seriously. If you don't look the right way, you don't say the right things, or criticize the government, the Trump administration wants you out of the country. Their actions and rhetoric have sent shockwaves of fear through Michigan's naturalized citizen community. And why does that matter to me? I care because my district and much of Metro Detroit is home to tens of thousands of naturalized citizens. 1/3 of the population of Troy, which I represent, is foreign born, with so many of my neighbors born in India and China. Troy would not be the vibrant, thriving city it is today without them, and I'm proud to call so many naturalized citizens my friends and neighbors. Also, on a selfish front, my daughters are international adoptees and therefore immigrants. And while they're not technically naturalized citizens, I know they could be the next target. So the Trump administration, I say to them, leave our naturalized citizens alone. They're Americans who worked hard, paid taxes, and obeyed the law even before earning their citizenship. And once they earn their citizenship, they are not second-class citizens. They are full citizens who are very intentionally protected by the 14th Amendment to the Constitution. They have the same rights as native-born Americans, and I won't stand idly by while the administration threatens them. That's why I'm introducing this resolution today. It calls on the Department of Justice to reverse its policy, and while I'm not holding my breath that the House will adopt it, I know that the majority party in the House tends to demonize undocumented and immigrants and naturalized citizens in the same sentence. But it will forever be a matter of public record that Michigan House Democrats support and celebrate our naturalized citizens. And with that, I will turn things over to my honorable colleague, Representative Mai Song of District 13.
Thank you so much. I want to thank Rep. McDonell for being an ally to the immigrant community and for introducing this resolution that brings awareness to the increased efforts of the federal administration's actions to denaturalize and invalidate the citizenship of millions of Americans. This effort is being done so that the federal government can ultimately deport naturalized U.S. citizens. Now more than ever, we must stand up for those who are being targeted, attacked, and taken out of our communities. Conducting denaturalization proceedings solely via civil litigation is potentially an unconstitutional violation of due process rights. The Fifth Amendment of the U.S. Constitution states that no person shall be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. Civil proceedings do not provide the same protections as criminal proceedings. For example, in most civil cases, even if you cannot afford to hire an attorney, you do not have the right to a court appointed attorney, as you would in a criminal case. Decisions are made behind closed doors, often without evidence or notice, and the process moves quickly. The judge is the jury. A person may not have a chance to contest the outcome. Once denaturalization, the person loses citizenship immediately, becomes vulnerable to deportation through separate immigration court proceedings. The increased detainments, deportations, and billions in taxpayer money directed toward border security and immigration control, coupled with the directive from the U.S. Department of Justice to, quote, prioritize and maximally pursue, end quote, civil denaturalization cases are deeply troubling and threaten the very principles our country was founded on. In the past, we have always been a country where anyone, regardless of what they looked like or where they were born, could come here and become a naturalized U.S. citizen. The pathway to citizenship is a rigorous, expensive, and long, arduous process. It is not easy to achieve this lifelong dream. And yet, this administration is making it even harder for individuals to reach their goals and aspirations. The very first bill that was passed by Congress in January and signed into law by President Trump was the Laken-Riley Act. This is a law that is meant to protect citizens and keep all of us safe in our neighborhoods. Unfortunately, it does the exact opposite. It strips away people's rights to due process. It allows the federal government to immediately detain non-citizens, including lawful permanent residents, green card holders, visa holders, refugees, asylees, TPS, temporary protective status, and DACA recipients, without a bond, as soon as the person is arrested or charged, and even before there is a trial or a conviction or a guilty verdict. We have seen this federal administration aggressively target immigrants, whether undocumented, permanent, and now naturalized U.S. citizens, and we should all be very concerned. In Macomb County, 1 in 9 residents is foreign born. That means that 1 in 9 residents is a naturalized U.S. citizen. That includes me. The foreign-born population in Macomb County contributes significantly to the local economy through labor, entrepreneurship, and spending. According to the American Immigration Council's data from 2014, immigrants contributed $4.1 billion to Macomb County's GDP and supported social programs by contributing over $237 million to Social Security and nearly $57 million to Medicare. Although immigrants made up 10.4% of the population in 2014, they constituted 12% of the employed labor workforce. The immigrant workforce is overrepresented in key sectors, including transportation and warehousing, retail trade, and healthcare and social assistance. The Michigan League for Public Policy noted that immigrants in Michigan have been responsible for roughly 60% of the state's population growth over the last decade. Their contributions continue to help create and preserve jobs in my county and in yours. I believe that we can all agree everyone should follow the law of our state and our country. But when these laws and policies are created by powerful men and women who are out of touch and not working in the best interest of our people, when these laws are quickly changing to strip away basic human rights and damaging our local economy, we must stand up with this resolution, with our words, and with our action. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rep. Song. Next, we'll hear from Vital Ane, an IT professional from my district who is also a current board trustee for the Troy School District.
Thank you, Rep. MacDonell. Good morning, and thank you for this opportunity for me to speak. My name is Vital Ane, and I stand before you as a naturalized American citizen, as someone who chose this country, who believed in its promise, and who has worked every day to be part of it. I wasn't born here, but I built my life here. As a young adult, 15 years ago, I waited patiently for 15 years, passed all the background checks and tests, raised my hand, and swore an oath to uphold the Constitution and pledged allegiance to this country, my country. At least that's what I thought. Since then, I've done what millions of naturalized citizens do quietly every day. I've become part of this community. We are your neighbors, your friends, your colleagues. We are volunteers at the food bank, at PTA meetings, robotics competitions. We check in on your elderly adults. We coach Little League soccer teams and vote in school board elections. We work hard to integrate, to contribute, and to belong, not just on paper, but in real life. We love this country the way only someone who chose it can. That's what makes the current focus on denaturalization so painful and so dangerous. Federal agencies are digging through old records looking for small errors or technicalities that could be used to strip people like me of our citizenship. And let's not pretend that it's random. These efforts disproportionately target naturalized citizens who are brown, Asian, Black, Hindu, people who are more likely to come under scrutiny simply because of where we are from or the way we look. We are told our citizenship might not be permanent at all, that a small mistake made decades back could mean that we don't belong here anymore, or small civil violations such as an unpaid parking ticket possibly could end our American dream, that we will never really be one of you. This isn't just cruel, it's un American. Because once someone becomes a citizen, they are no less American than anyone born here. That's the promise, at least that's the principle. We live that promise every day. We follow the law, we contribute to the economy, we assimilate, not by losing who we are, but by adding to what America is. So I ask you all to stand with us. Speak out against the weaponization of denaturalization. Refuse to be part of it. Protect your citizens, all of them, no matter where they're born, because citizenship should mean full belonging, permanent, equal, and respected. Anything else undermines not just immigrants like me, but the very idea that what this means to be an American. We are not guests. We are not temporary. We are part of this country. I took an oath to protect this country, yet I am not protected. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Vital. I think you can all see why this is so important and how unfair it is. Our final speaker is Renis Nishai. He's an attorney who is a constituent of mine, owns a law practice in Troy, and is the city attorney for Clawson, which is also my district. Renis.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Good morning. My name is Ren Nusha, and first I wanted to thank Representative MacDonell and the rest of the representatives that are here today for your leadership and for bringing forward this very important issue to our community as a whole. As I can say that as a naturalized citizen and as an attorney, this is both personally and professionally deeply important to me. Over the course of the last decade, it's become somewhat of a cruel norm for politicians on the other side of the aisle to make cruel comments with respect to our immigrant population, with respect to citizens, naturalized citizens, and beyond, and bring that insensitive and hateful speech concerning these groups to the public forum. Unlike these politicians, I believe that immigrants are the finest among us. This is a country of immigrants, after all. But you don't have to believe me when I say that I believe, for example, that India has sent the finest among us, and China has sent the finest among us. You can just come to Representative MacDonell's district of the city of Troy and meet our Indian American community and the fine individuals, the fine doctors, engineers, IT developers. You can meet their families. You can go to their temple, to the Indian Temple on Adams Road, which is a beautiful site and a beautiful center of our community. And you can have, I promise you, some of the best food you'll ever dream of in our community. And it doesn't stop there, of course. You can do so with our Chinese Americans. You can do so with the Chaldean Americans in Sterling Heights. You'll find that they're the best of the businessmen that you could possibly have. They're the finest attorneys that you'll ever run across. And beyond, you could go to Clawson, you could go to Royal Oak, Troy, Rochester Hills area, and find all the Albanian Americans whom I've had the pleasure of being one and representing them as an attorney over decades. They're some of the finest people you'll ever run across. Good, wholesome American citizens dedicated to the proposition and the promise that this country has asked us all to fulfill. Becoming an American was my life's honor. And the day that I became an American citizen, I received a letter from the President of the United States. And that letter hangs over my desk above my computer, and I get to read it every day. And there's a particular portion of it that I love above all, and I'll quote it for you. It says, "Americans are united across the generations by grand and enduring ideals. The grandest of these ideals is an unfolding promise that everyone belongs, that everyone deserves a chance, and that no insignificant person was ever born. Our country has never been united by blood or birth or soil. We are bound by principles that move us beyond our backgrounds, lift us above our interests, and teach us what it means to be citizens. Every citizen must uphold these principles, and every new citizen, by embracing these ideals, makes our country more, not less American." Those are beautiful words by that liberal stalwart called George W. Bush. And it's perhaps time that we revisit the meaning behind those words. And we revisit also and take heed of the words of my friend and Representative Sharon MacDonell, who in a recent op-ed said something beautiful. It said, "Let's reaffirm what it means to be an American and send a strong bipartisan message that Michigan values its naturalized citizens. The 14th Amendment guarantees that once you become a citizen, your rights are equal and enduring." And I think we're either going to heed those words and treat the Constitution of the United States as the document that is grand and enduring and that ensures the rights of all citizens, American citizens, throughout the generations, throughout the ages, or risk turning it into a rag for any two-bit politician to trample upon. Thank you so much, and thank you to the Democratic Caucus and all the representatives for their leadership. Appreciate it.
Thank you, and I hope everybody can see what an important issue this is and consider in your professional lives, your personal lives, to get the word out and to understand that when people who are undocumented are dehumanized, when they're deserving by the Constitution of due process, that it makes all of us a little less human. And when we allow people who are guaranteed by our Constitution to have equal rights to us, that we should fight for that, just as we would fight for ourselves and our children. So with that, thank you all so much for coming. And if anyone has questions for any of us, please go ahead and ask.
Representative.
Yes, sir.
So, Kyle Malin from MERS, is there something recent that has happened on the denaturalization front that you're bringing this to our attention now? It looks like the memo that you're referring to was cut in June.
It was in June, and this has just been a few months in process. As you know, between June and now, there's been a lot of focus on the budget. We've been very busy. We actually, about a month and a half ago, had a press conference scheduled, but it was an inopportune time for that to happen because of some political things that were happening in this country. One of the days that the session was actually shut down. So we didn't think it was a safe time to talk about this issue. So we had to wait till all of our people could get us back on their schedules again to come out today.
And then my follow-up then, Representative, as I'm looking through this memo, it appears like the people who are up for denaturalization are people who are engaged in some pretty heinous behavior, war crimes, torture, poses national security threats, human trafficking, this kind of thing. Why are you so concerned about folks like the fine woman you just introduced about being denaturalized? And it looks like the focus is on hardened criminals.
Well, that was
Sorry.
that was the focus before they decided to say that we must reprioritize getting more people denaturalized. As I read their, as Rep. Song said, by focusing this in civil courts, it makes it easier to denaturalize people. And I don't know how many people they're talking about having war crimes. Also, they also said that all of those serious cases are important, but in the memo it said also, or any other cases referred to the court that the division determines to be sufficiently important to pursue.
Yep.
So let's face it, if we look at what's happening in this country right now, suddenly, although the promise of the Trump administration was, as I read in my speech, going to be focused on hardened criminals, rapists, and all of the things that Mr. Trump talks about, that is not what we have seen in real life, including the arrest of actual citizens and the detaining of actual citizens, because there being no due process. How can we know who the people are? It's that constant breaking of the Constitution, in my view, that's the problem. If we're going to promise we're going to do our best by deporting undocumented citizens, and then it's just a free-for-all, I don't believe the promise of this memo either. Why would we believe a federal government and an administration who is continuously not doing what the courts tell them to do and ignoring our Constitution? Does anyone else have an answer as well?
Yeah, I'd like to hear what.
I laughed out loud at you for your earnest belief. Sorry, I laughed out loud for your earnest belief that what the administration wrote on paper is really what they're going to adhere to. Kyle, have you been paying attention to what's been happening in this country for the last few months? Look with your eyes, hear with your ears, believe when people tell you, citizens, naturalized citizens, that are being detained illegally. Believe them. I know that there's words on a memo from the very well-known lying Trump administration, but they are not believable when you believe your eyes and your ears.
And I said that in such a nicer way.
I will say that, this memo was issued in June, but there was so much else going on too, with the big, beautiful bill being passed, $70 billion redirected to border security, immigration control. All of that money has a huge impact on our state's budget, and we had to work during the budget season to backfill the losses from that bill. And this money is money that it's taxpayer money that could go towards food and healthcare, and instead it's being redirected to immigration enforcement. And we know that they have a quota that the Trump administration has tried to aggressively meet, 3,000 per day to be deported. And frankly, they're just grasping for people so that they can meet that quota. Even in my own community, as I've been advocating for refugees who have been detained and deported for decades old cases that have been expunged by our state. And now with the memo and the attempt at denaturalizing U.S. citizens, that's just another attempt for them to increase that quota. And you heard I said the Laken Riley Act, that was their number one priority in January. The first major piece of legislation to change the Immigration Nationality Act that hasn't been changed since 1980. And they introduced that bill and that law under the guise of trying to save or protect Americans and our communities. But instead, it's stripping people's rights away from them, allowing the federal government to detain them immediately. And when these people are detained and taken across our state or country, it's harder for them to get that due process and that justice, because then they have to find an attorney in the state wherever they are And many of these people in civil proceedings, they do not have the funds to hire an attorney that will help advocate for them the way that a criminal case where they could be appointed a court appointed attorney. So while I do agree that we do need to hold those accountable that are committing heinous crimes, as you mentioned, it's also taking people who are innocent and in our communities and unable to defend themselves. And many of these people fled government oppression and political violence and have a distrust in our government. And when we should be working to be a welcoming country, we are instead faced with this type of political rhetoric that will dehumanize immigrants.
I just have one more question. If it's okay. You had mentioned the quota that they set for basically kicking people out of the country. What's your belief on how that number was set? Do you think that number was just pulled out of the sky, or where do you think that came from?
Well, they tend to pull out numbers from the sky a lot to do a lot of estimates without backing facts. I think that number just sounded like it was aggressive, that there were millions of people that were let in from a previous administration, which is not true because these people have been here for decades. I've been here for decades. We didn't come through the Biden administration. And so they haven't been able to meet that quota, that 3,000. They're going back and opening people's cases that have expired essentially, that the courts don't even have records of people's nonviolent convictions, and taking these people and then saying that they've met their quota for the day or the month and deporting them, but grouping them with the worst of the worst.
I just want to add to that, if we're talking about numbers, how many times have we heard on the House floor this term, this year, the last few months, that 10 million undocumented immigrants flooded across the border just during the Biden administration? If there are that many undocumented people, 10 million, where are they? Why do they have to go back and find someone who's a refugee, who has a 15-year-old expunged crime, and deport them? Where are the 10 million?
Sure.
Thank you. State Representative Veronica Pais here. I'm a Latina, so that's peripheral kind of to this. I have a friend whose husband is a naturalized citizen from Mexico. Works for a big corporation. Things go well. He is more stereotypically Latino looking than I may be. And they both have been having some difficulties just adjusting to the fear that this could possibly happen, given that we've seen real U.S. citizens from the get-go born here are being arrested and detained, or at least thrown in jail for a couple of days while things get worked out. So there's a paranoia there. And that paranoia has, not an unfounded paranoia, mind you, that has filtered down to their fear for their children, who have a parent born in Mexico and a parent born here. Since they've seen people who were born here and are U.S. citizens get arrested, they fear that as a naturalized citizen, something could happen to them, and that has filtered down then to the fear for their children, having one parent who is naturalized. So even though we may aim to go after hardened criminals and all of that, this is still initiated fear, and this is how people go about their daily lives. And so we need to even get rid of that fear there, because if not, we're all walking around with this tension, and it affects how we're leading our lives, interacting with other people, with our employers. And so I think this is something that's timely all the time and really needs to be addressed. And I can certainly understand that we don't trust our federal government for this, because we've seen this happening over and over and over again, regardless of what words are said at the federal level. So I just wanted to put that in. Thank you.
May I answer your previous question, if I may? As an attorney, I can tell you that, and as Representative Zong indicated earlier, the Immigration and Nationality Act was passed in 1986 under the watchful eye of the Democratic Party standard bearer. I believe his name was Ronald Reagan. And ever since then, there's been an articulation on the books under the Immigration and Nationality Act with respect to the process, the delineation of a process for denaturalization. It has worked flawlessly all along since 1986. The reason you can know and believe that it's worked flawlessly is because you've never heard about it until now. That has happened, the process of denaturalization happens in federal court in front of a federal judge. Right? And it's a process the Department of Justice takes very seriously and has pursued on numerous occasions. You probably haven't read much of it, but I would remind you of the story of the Nazi officer in, I believe it was Ohio, that was denaturalized and deported out of the country because he never declared said allegiance. What we're doing now, what we're seeing happening now, is something entirely different. It's a rewriting of the Immigration and Nationality Act simply by way of interpretation, not by way of legislation. Thank you.
Anything else?
Good, thank you.